and welcome back to AP Environmental Science. Today what we want to talk about is indoor air pollution, and we've talked a lot about all kinds of pollution, but specifically outdoor pollution, and it turns out that you're going to have the most problems in buildings, right, and in your car, and so we really want to investigate that. What does that mean, right? Now, first of all, when we talk about indoor environmental quality, and this is an actual thing, we are talking about really 6 areas, and that is air quality, noise, lighting, comfort, ergonomic stressors, and psychosocial stressors. Now, obviously, we are going to be most interested in air quality, okay? But all of these other things go into making a productive, comfortable workspace, all right? There is such a thing as noise pollution and light pollution, but in the case of buildings, when you talk about lighting, you're talking about poor lighting, right? It's very hard to work if you don't have good light. It's hard to focus if it's noisy. If you're uncomfortable, you have to sit on the floor, you have horrible chairs, or, whatever, okay? And then ergonomic stressors, like are you typing all day? Are your wrists in funny positions? Things like that. And then psychosocial, that's about personal relationships, and we are not even going to touch that because that is a totally different class. Okay, anyway, back to indoor air quality. There are 3 big things that we're going to look at in terms of indoor air quality and what actually makes it not great, or great, as case may be, is general ventilation, pollutant concentrations, and thermal conditions. And we're not going to talk a lot about thermal conditions, but thermal conditions will go into both the air quality as well as the comfort portion of the indoor environmental quality, because think about being too hot or too cold, but then temperature also affects what can grow in your building, okay? So just keep in mind that thermal's got this other thing, and the same thing with ventilation, actually. So even though we're talking about the air quality itself, I mean, ventilation goes to comfort as well. If it's all stuffy and, stinky and yucky, then you don't want that. Okay, so here is your first question. True or false? The air inside homes and buildings is cleaner and safer than the air outdoors. Well, if you've been paying attention at all, you will know that the answer to that is false, because we think about, well, the air comes in, it's filtered, and we're safe, but in fact, right, pollutants inside are anywhere from 10 to 100 times higher than they are outside. And in cars, it's like 18 times higher than outside, right? And so generally, cars are going to be problematic, but you open and close your door a lot, you open and close your windows a lot, and so, there's a little bit more ventilation there, but it's still really bad, especially, and it can be even worse if you have stuff from your engine venting inside the car. And then one of the big deals about indoor pollution is not just that the concentrations are higher, it's that we spend more time indoors. And people can actually spend anywhere from 70 to 98% of their time indoors. And you think about that 98%, and people are like, well, that's ridiculous. But think about if you have an indoor job, you park in a parking garage, you go through the parking garage into your office, right? You work all day inside. If there is a cafeteria or you brought your lunch or a food court or whatever, you're eating inside the same building, right? You may walk outside for lunch, maybe not, but you could actually be entirely within your building. Then you get back in your car, you drive home. If you have an attached garage, you drive directly into your garage, you walk directly into your house. The only time that you are outside is ultimately when you're going to like the grocery store, okay? And so there are people who really do spend all of their time inside a place of one sort or another, okay? And then the other thing is sick building syndrome, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And oddly enough, it's more common in new buildings than old ones. You'd think, oh, we've got all these old sick buildings, but we'll talk about why. Okay, so the major indoor air pollutants, most of these things are things we've heard of before, but we're going to add, in this case, asbestos, formaldehyde, right, radon. Okay, these are all the things those are the 3 big things we're adding. Everything else we already know about, okay? And then this is just a nice little schematic, or diagram, drawing, that gives you some things that you're getting from all of the things actually in your home, okay? So read that. You've got the PowerPoint. Okay, now the biologics, that's exactly what they're going to be. And I've put a little link in here to the EPA website on biologics, so you can check that out. but got some great pictures here. But basically, we're talking about the things that grow, how your pets and not pets can affect you. Dust, a lot of that is skin cells, right? So that's actually biologic. Mites, those are tiny little buggy-like things. Cockroaches, blech. And then pollen, right, is also a big deal. And a lot of this goes to allergies, right? Almost all of it goes to allergies, actually. Okay, and then radon. Radon is a radioactive gas. It is naturally occurring in certain areas based on the geology. We are not actually in a high radon area, and I'll show you the map in just a second. It can come from well water and outdoor air. And so remember, early on we talked about how the world around you is in fact radioactive. Well, radon is one of the causes of that. It's not just background radiation from space. The Earth itself is off-gassing this radioactive gas. Now, there are artificial sources too. I mean, think about your building materials. Gypsum board, which is sheetrock, right? Concrete block, mortar. All of these things are going to be made from these things, right? Minerals, rocks, yeah? And so when you have those, they're still going to be off-gassing radon. It is a huge lung cancer threat. And we're going to talk a little bit more about radon in your activity. Okay, and then here's just the map of the radon zones. You can see that zone 3, we're going to be less than 2 picocuries per liter. That's good, but look at all of these areas. These are where you have those geologic formations, predominantly mountains, and big plains, like plateau-style plains. Here's the Appalachians. That's going to be where your highest radon levels are, and when you're there, you have to worry about having radon build up in your house. So, which method would be best to remove radon from your house? Well, remove uranium from the ground, ventilate the house, or seal the floor with carpeting. Radon is not a uranium issue, okay? So there's that. You cannot seal your floor, especially not with carpet, which happens to be porous, but you can't, like, block it out. So the best thing that you can do, really, is just open your windows. Have good ventilation, and it will blow that right out of your house. But if you leave your windows closed all the time, no ventilation, and you live in a radon area, it's going to build up in your house. Okay, so what are the sources of indoor air pollution? How do these things get into your home? Oh my gosh, so many ways. Outside sources. You let outside stuff in when you come in. And then, of course, some of the things that you live near have all sorts of emissions. Your cars from roads and parking lots and garages and loading docks, the garbage stuff that's off-gassing. Where are the intakes for the air for your air conditioning system? If that's in a garage, that's going to make your air quality pretty bad. You know, radon, of course, and then landfills, because those off-gas. Standing water gets you all sorts of fun biologics, and this is usually going to be associated with air conditioning systems. And then, of course, we've talked about all this stuff before. And then equipment that you're using, the actual air conditioning system itself, right, collects dust and all kinds of yucky stuff, all kinds of moisture, and so you have all sorts of things growing in there. They also are not always vented well, which is a problem. And then, of course, if you're trying to kill the stuff that's growing in there, you could vent it right into your space, which is bad. And then the stuff that we use, right, has all sorts of emissions. And you can tell when you use a copier, it has that interesting smell, right? Glues and solvents, most of them are toxic, right? Cleaning supplies, a lot of those are toxic. Okay, now you yourself could be causing your own air pollution with cooking smoke, right? Cosmetics, perfumes, lotions. Let's say that you do not use the appropriate beauty products, right? You may have body odors. Smoking, so bad, don't smoke, yeah? And then stuff that you use in your house for maintenance, okay? You've got all the chemicals, the paints, the varnishes, the glues, the solvents, the caulks, the pesticides, right? And then if you're doing any construction, dust builds up quite easily. All right. Now, building components will cause pollution too, okay? You can have dust that collects in corners, right? If you go in the corner of your room or the baseboards, you'll actually see all this dust is collected there. And so your house or your building itself actually will trap these things, and then as you walk by, it may blow up into the air. Water damage. This is a water damage situation. All of this, these are white walls. All of this is mold from water, okay? Yuck. And then, of course, this is extreme. This would be the hoarding situation, but unsanitary conditions in the home are going to be problematic. And then some furniture actually off gases, and you can tell because you can smell it. If you walk up to your furniture or your curtains or your mattresses or your pillows or whatever, and they have a chemical-y smell, that's chemicals. Okay, so when we talk about these sources, this was actually done by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, right? And so they were looking at all sorts of things, and you can see that the majority of problems are actually caused by ventilation, okay? And that's why I put this in here. I mean, this is all very interesting, but the one I want you to really pay attention to is this idea of ventilation. It's really, really important, okay? Now, when we talk about outdoor air entering indoor spaces, okay, how does it get in? Well, it's going to come in through, it's not airtight. Your house isn't airtight, so it's going to come in through all of these spaces. When you open the window or open the door, it's going to come through, and then you actually, bring air in and out of your home through your air conditioning system, right? And so there's all kinds of ways. When it's seeping in through cracks or whatever, that's infiltration. When you open and close the doors, that's natural ventilation. And when you're bringing it in with fans and ductwork, that's going to be mechanical ventilation, okay? Where is the indoor air pollution problem on the EPA's list of 18 sources of cancer risk? Like, these are the top 18. Is it first, second, third, left? It is actually first, okay? These pollutants are really, really a problem, okay? So it is first on the list of pollutants. Now, asthma is something that has been on the rise as air pollution and air pollution has been on the rise and air quality has been decreasing, right? And about 30 million people, actually more than 30 million people in the U.S. are affected by asthma, and about a third of those are children. And it is the number one cause of hospitalization for children. It is the number one chronic health condition, and it is the number one health condition that causes school absences. It is a huge problem, and it is rising, okay? This is an old chart, but it's still, I did not actually find a nice graph that was newer, but it is rising. You see this little dip right here, but it's still rising. I mean, this dip is like 300% versus 400%. And overall, right, it's been an over 40% increase in the U.S., and among children, it's been almost 60%. And deaths from asthma have increased by 78%, almost 80%. That's crazy, right? Okay, so let's say that you have a friend that argues that the changes seen on the previous graph are natural and caused by genetics and natural selection as opposed to air pollution. What would you tell her? The changes are far too rapid to be genetic. Asthma would probably be selected against. Unrelated children all over the country are affected, and it is unlikely that all of those children had mutations or variations that would result in asthma or some condition. All of these are reasons your friend is wrong. All of these are reasons your friend is wrong, okay? These are rapid changes. You're not talking about some biologic condition that's going through the population. There's too many coincidences that would have to happen for that as well, not just the rapidness, but there's that. And then if you are talking about natural selection, which this does not apply to this situation, but your friend seems to think it does, asthma would be selected against because people would die and they would not pass on their genes. So there's that. Anyway, so these are all reasons your friend is wrong. All right, let's talk about the sick building syndrome. So, what does that mean? A sick building is a building in which more than 20% of the occupants are suffering from adverse health effects, but they don't actually have any sort of disease, right? And so they go to the doctor, there's something wrong with me, I don't know what it is, blah, 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 no one can find anything. It is a condition of the building, not the occupants, and so oftentimes what happens is they will go to work, you will feel bad, typically progressively throughout the day, you get home and you start feeling better almost immediately, right? And maybe not almost immediately as time goes on and you've got more exposure and more exposure and more exposure, but you always feel better when you're not at work, and that we all kind of laugh at that because it's like, well, everybody feels better when they're not doing their job or at school or whatever, but this is an actual like physical situation, right? You can see that these are the big, right, things that are related, the symptoms that are related to sick building syndrome, all of them, air pollution. They're all air quality things, right? They're all things associated with air quality, okay? And then this I just put in here, there's a couple of pages of chart here, and it is all about like possible contaminants, the symptoms that they cause. Pick a couple of these and know them, right? So know what the symptoms are of, let's say that you pick VOCs and formaldehyde, okay? Know the symptoms, a couple of sources, right? Okay, and then here's just the next list on that one. All right, here are some solutions, right, to prevent indoor air pollution, and here are some things that you can do to clean it up. And when you read this list, and you should read this list, you need to think about, oh my goodness, these are all common sense, right? Don't seal yourself into a building and use lots of stuff that's stinky, okay, or that is harmful, right? And then good ventilation, and almost all of these deal with good ventilation, by the way. Okay. Now, green buildings are a great solution to the idea of the sick building. And the reason that new buildings, by the way, are more susceptible to sick building is because typically new buildings do not have windows that open. They have all sorts of materials that have lots of chemicals that off gas, and a lot of times they have air intakes in odd places in terms of like air quality, so they're not the best places. And so, but the two big reasons are windows that don't open and materials that are used that off gas a lot. So what's the alternative? Well, let's build a green building, okay? And green buildings are, by the way, this right here, these are the 5 things that they look at when they look at LEED certification. And just as an aside, the science building here at Hockaday is working on, or by the time some people listen to it, will have had LEED certification, and so that's a green building. The science building here at Hockaday is a green building. Okay. Anyway, so why would you do that? Well, first of all, there's an economic benefit. Okay, you save lots of money because of you're saving water, you're saving energy. Okay. You're also having these great environmental savings, yeah? And then this I found, this is from the WHO, and then it's actually about London, but I like this right here in terms of the decreasing, and of course you see that right here, but then I also liked this idea of the green schools, right? And then talking about productivity with workers, and then again, productivity with workers. And so I think these are really interesting numbers, that if you just have good quality environments, that people do better, and that is really obvious if you think about it. Okay, these are things that we've talked about. This is just a consolidated list of common house problems, and then I put this in here because I am not actually familiar with Heartland Builders, but I did enjoy their picture where they talk about all the great solutions to some of the common problems that people have, so check that out. That's for you. Here's your last question. How many people around the world rely on biomass to cook and heat their homes? 2.5 billion, right? 2.5 billion. That is a lot of people, and the typical home may look something like this, okay? That is horrible air quality, okay? You've got a situation where you are having carbon monoxide, particulates, and then benzene and formaldehyde. Often these are going to come from the chemicals that are used to treat the wood to keep it from rotting or to keep insects from eating it away. And this is what you're getting, right? These are the guidelines for these 4 things. And there's more stuff in there too. This just happens to be what we've talked about. I've put some information out there for you on haiku, right? And so the World Health Organization guidelines, this is what is in the typical home from 1 kilogram of wood burning in a closed kitchen. Most homes in Africa, for instance, use 5 to 10 kilograms per day. So you can now imagine what happens to these numbers. And so what we're going to do in class is start looking at some of these pollutants and indoor air quality for people who have cook fires and things like that. If you have any questions, that's it for today. Ask me the questions in class next time, and thanks for listening.